What is up, guys? It's Archer with the Wakfusiasts channel. Today bringing you the first guide in a guide we're going to start in a series of guides we're going to start about characters and all the different specialties that you can get into. I know some classes are a little more confusing than others, so hopefully this guide will help you if you're finding your favorite class and you don't know how to play them. Maybe if you think that you're not playing them the best that they could be played. So for the first guide here, since I'm Archer and all, we're going to be doing a preview of my Craw, and I'm going to show you, if you also like the Craw class, how to play it. I'm not saying it's the best way, but I know some of the tricks of the trade since I've been playing this class a little while now. So we're going to get into a couple different things here. As you can see, there's the three elemental branches for Craw being air, fire, and earth. So the interesting thing you can do with this, even from a lower level, but mostly about level 100 plus, you can start to hybridize these elements. So we're going to cover a pure air guide. We're going to cover an air main with a fire sub guide. We're going to cover a fire main guide, so that being only fire, and then a fire air hybrid, being fire being the main one. And then we're also going to do an earth guide, and there's also earth hybrids, but I'm going to explain to you why you probably aren't going to want a hybrid with the earth branch if you decide to go that route. So let's go ahead and start with air. So if you're going to be a pure air Craw, that means you're going to invest all of your possible experience points, and you use all these moves. Basically, yeah, you're using all these moves to level up, because you're not going to be allocating anything unless you do a respec with Kano. But as you can see here, I'm actually a air main with a fire sub build, because sometimes I don't like to use all air, and especially with challenges and different things, and I don't really use the windy beacon, even though I actually found out a really useful way to use it. But so I have 4 of my abilities that I use mostly, and then also a highly invested fire attack here. You can see level 109 explosive arrow. What that lets me do is do a pretty powerful fire attack when need be. So if I don't want to use air, or if I just want to combo for any reason, doing more AoE or something, I can shoot off a really powerful explosive arrow. And the way you do that as well with the new updates on gear is you can actually invest. That's not a good example at all. I don't have fire on my Vampiro headgear here, but most of my other pieces, they're either fire or air and fire hybrids. Man, a lot of my gear doesn't have fire. That needs to change. But most of my gear I tried to roll as fire air to support this build, because the armor now you can do a lot more hybridizing, customization, and I really like it. So let's get into actually how I kind of play this class. We can do some example fights here, and I'm going to show you one of the tactics with this particular build. And again, it's a primarily PvE enemy build, because I don't do as much PvPing as I would like just yet, and but we'll talk about PvP setups and what you can do as a Craw there too. So let's just fight something here, something not gonna mess me up too bad. None of this would really mess me up, but you know how it is. So we'll go ahead and start this fight, and I'm going to show you my windy beacon tactic here if you're an air Craw. So you can see that the main air attack has a T area of effect, and if you actually place your windy beacon next to, now the windy beacon only costing Wakfu, not any AP, you can actually use your air arrow that you can only use twice a turn anyways. You can use it twice. Oh, and I killed it. Okay. We may have to go somewhere stronger. So I'll just do a setup. I'll fight one of these guys, and I'll just do a setup of it, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And I won't actually kill him because he doesn't have that much HP. So we would place, let's say an enemy is over here, and we would place our windy beacon right next to the enemy, and then we would go ahead and line up the flat edge of our T here with the beacon and the enemy in the middle, and you would actually hit the enemy. You would take damage from the windy beacon, and it would push the enemy over. And then you could do it again, because he'll be sitting right here in this cell, and you can actually hit the beacon and him again with that second hit, and then also use another hit if you have enough AP. So that means you will have pushed him over twice, taken windy beacon damage, and taken the damage from your main attacks. And as you can see, that can stack up a lot. So that is a really cool air build there. And if you're like me and you hybridize the fire attack with air, you can shoot off a nice explosive arrow every once in a while, and it's pretty high AP cost, but it also is pretty strong, so whenever I need to, I can shoot off an explosive arrow and an air arrow if I wanted to, depending on the circumstances. So that's the air branch, and next we're going to talk about the fire branch, which is also really neat. And I actually started in the fire branch as a craw. It was just my favorite thing, and I don't know, I really liked the whole fire aspect, and it's really cool how you can play the fire craw. If you're doing a lot of mob farming, or you just really like pumping out the area of effect damage, the fire branch, the air branch you can do it too with that T-shaped arrow attack, but the fire branch is, you'll see, a much wider AoE. We can actually fight 3 guys here, and I'll show you. Much larger area of effect, much more effective, usually all around. So the other cool thing I want to show you here, though, is we could start a fight here. I gotta pull it up. Oh, I already had it pulled up. So our fiery incandescent beacon here, you can actually place this guy. Let's think of a good spot. Let's say right here. And then if you shoot that beacon with the other enemies with a fire arrow, the beacon will fire off its damage, as will the arrow. And you can actually summon multiple incandescent beacons at the same time. So I could have summoned 2, I think. Maybe. Nope, it actually has a 1-turn cooldown now. Well, you used to be able to. But that's how you play the fire class mainly. You lay down your incandescent beacon where the enemies are. Oh, that's not good. I am wrapped up in a cocoon and may not be able to escape it. I can't. Oh, okay, you can escape it, thank God. So, I'm not going to use my air because we're doing a fire guide here. That wouldn't have hit with the beacon, but as you can see, I fired off the beacon as well as hitting the targets. And that's mainly how you do the fire branch. And you're going to want to pull the retreat arrow from the air branch even if you're main fire. Just don't level it up as much, because that pushback is going to save your life sometimes. So what you could also do if you want to be a hybrid is you could be invested into 4 of the most used fire abilities here and use all those mainly, and then also invest heavily whenever you do a respec into retreat arrow, and that way you'll have a strong retreat arrow whenever you do use it, and it'll do a lot more damage and pushback, which is useful because none of the fire abilities here have pushback. Your other alternative is to invest in disengage here. So that's the fire branch. And now the earth branch, which is, I think, my favorite, even though I have not tried it yet. As you can see, I don't have all the abilities unlocked because when I did a respec, I didn't allocate anything into those. But I've played it once and I know how to do it, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. So the whole basis of this earth tree here is to stack up this state of riddled and reach, and also invest in riddling here as your ability, because what you do is throughout the fight, as you're hitting different enemies, you're stacking up levels of riddled and reach on them, and then you have this very powerful destructive arrow, which is only linear, so you have to line up right to fire it off, but it consumes all the riddled and reach states that you have to actually cause a lot of havoc on your enemies. So that's how the earth build is going to be really good. I'm thinking in PvP as well as focusing down bosses. Really strong damage. You can hit them with all your regular arrows doing decent damage. This one rebounds and different stuff like that. And oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. This arrow, you might look at the tree and be like, oh, this is the only one that stacks up levels of riddled and reach. But if you actually invest into riddling all the way, as maybe even one of your first things, this adds +2 levels of riddled and reach per AP of any arrow you use. So if you use this one, it'll stack even further. It's doing level 1. If you have the full riddling invested in here, it'll actually do +3 levels each arrow. And then all the other arrows that don't normally do any would also do +2 levels if you use them. And those, again, you want to stack up. It's kind of for focusing down single targets. That's the whole earth branch here. The seismic beacon, not that good in my opinion. It does a much wider and wholly, as in holes, area of effect that I've never really found useful. Some other people might be like, oh, it's really useful, I use it, but I unfortunately haven't had any good experience with it. So that is the whole PvE builds for the Craw. The next thing I want to kind of talk about is some of the PvP tactics that you might use. So again, different branches are going to be better for different things. The air branch up here, one thing I missed, has this nice plaguing arrow, which is 4 AP, but it can hit through targets, so you can usually always pluck on anybody that wherever they are with this arrow through anything, as the other arrows need line of sight. So that's a cool thing about the air branch for PvP. The fire one in PvP is going to be mainly about doing all that AoE, kind of like PvE as well. But then the earth branch, I think being really cool for PvP, is you can really, wail on this guy with all of your arrows stacking up riddled and reach, and then whenever you get that right opportunity, he's level 100 reach or riddled state, you can launch this thing and it'll do a lot of damage. As you can see, when you get up here to around 100, you're doing 3 HP. That's base. It's way more than that per level of riddled. So you would do, you would do like a 600 damage arrow plus like another 800 to 1,000 in reach riddled damage. So it's a really good little setup there. I'm thinking for PvP. I didn't find it as useful in PvE, which is why I'm not currently in Earthcraw. And the abilities you're going to want to invest into, so let's say as a normal Craw, you don't want to do PvP very much. You want to get Craw Precision here leveled up, Archery leveled up in the base levels, and as you grow in levels, you'll want to get, Powerful Shooting. This one gains more damage percent the farther you are away. You'll want to get maybe Unbeacon if that's what you find, but Disengage I find is really useful too. The more you invest into these, usually the lower AP cost they have, or the better stats you'll get. Heightened Vision is another one. So these bottom three are really the first three you probably want to get into if you're just a regular PvE Earthcraw trying to level up. These ones are going to be your best stats right in the beginning, and later on you can kind of see. But as a PvP Craw, this Sneakin' Beacon Sneakin' is going to be really helpful for you, because you can actually summon a beacon really far away and then use this attack, and as it's leveled up you can see the range gets higher, lower cost as well. You can teleport all the way to your beacon, which keeps you out of range of pesky melee attackers and it lets you be a lot more mobile. And then Bat's Eye here as well for PvP. You can decrease the range of the enemy characters as well as their lock. If they're right next to you, you can cast Bat's Eye on them and you should be able to dodge them, even though you're probably going to want to invest into dodge mainly with a Craw anyway. So you should be able to dodge most things, but this will definitely help, and it'll decrease their range. So hopefully if you can, get away from them, push them away with some retreat arrow, and then hit Bat's Eye on them and run away, they might not be able to hit you the next turn. And that's really cool stuff. Everything else, I find long distance combat to be pretty boring, and I never use it just because, eventually it gets only MP cost, which could be good in the really high levels, but I'm not really there yet. So that is the Craw and the different ways to kind of play the Craw. So I'm trying to think if I missed anything. Piercing Arrow here is really good for rebounding, and if you're doing an Earthcraw, you want to do riddling. There's no other way to go, because you're going to stack up levels of riddling on all the enemies and releasing that with this destructive arrow doing tons of damage. And I think that's about it, except for I want to look into some of our abilities here. So as a Craw, just briefly, you can see me, I go mainly into resistances, but if you're a high damage dealer, oh wait, that's not the right one, so yeah, but there is lifesteal here. So if you're a high damage dealer and you want to try out lifesteal, that's actually getting HP back for the damage you do. If you dish out a lot, or if you think you dish out a lot. If you're an Earthcraw particularly, they do a lot of damage, so that could be really useful for you. Regeneration is alright too, but I mainly focus on getting that resistance maxed out and then more HP. They changed this since the very beginning, and I invested all into this one because it was air damage and resistance, and now it's all damages, so you could have spread it out to spread out your resistances, and I just haven't been able to respec to do that. But now any of these top four you're going to invest in damages, which I would recommend doing all the way, and not in these resistance and health points unless you really want more health points. So whenever I respec here, I'm going to put all the points into damages up here, because it'll do all damages. Definitely go all into dodge as a Craw. Critical hits is a major one you want to go into as a Craw over anything else. I have critical hits and critical damage definitely the right way to go. And then I go into action points and movement points. And you can also go into, you know, final damage or anything else, or maybe range if you really need more range. But this is my setup, and it hopefully will give you a better idea on how to set up your craw. And I hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna bring you more guides on the other characters hopefully soon enough. All right, Archer out.